Yesterday was really productive. I got these 4 bars in the front. Now it's time to work on the back. We've set ourselves up for success here by drawing those little lines on the top of each one of these guys. We'll be able to, with something thin and straight, or be able to line up our bars on the back and pencil these guys in or knife them, and then work to those lines and get our rear bars fit in as well. So let's get to it. Okay, so it's time to start fitting our back half of our bar for number 1. So I've got the number 1 bar here. You can see that on the pencil line here. And I have the line up on top right here. And I'm going to do, since I got a little bit more room here, is I'm going to use a ruler to help me line this up to start with. I'm holding the ruler here against the bar. I'm going to slide my bar up against it. Now you can see I've removed waste really close, and I'm just going to try to get it kind of centered between those two for right now. And with that centered there, I'm going to provide some pressure, not too much, just a little bit, and draw a baseline. Now that I have this baseline here, what I can do is flip the piece over and measure how much over I am on each side. So I'm going to take my ruler here, bring up the ruler up to the edge of the mahogany. So it looks like I am over, see, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 sixteenths of an inch on the left. Eight, 9, 10, 11. Almost 12, just under 12 sixteenths on the right. So 12 sixteenths of an inch. Okay, so if I flip this guy over, and I take my bar here, make sure that my line is facing up. I want to come over 12 sixteenths of an inch. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I made a little bit of a mark here, 12 sixteenths of an inch. Now what I'm going to do is get my bar lined up with my baseline. And my 12 sixteenths of an inch mark. Once that's lined up, I'm going to come in here and pencil around the rest of it. So I got this little piece of mahogany here that got pushed out. I just accidentally pushed a little too hard and probably obviously lost a chunk of material right here. I'm not going to worry too much about it right now. Maybe a little bit of sanding, we can get this to look as if it's not even there. So now I have the outline of my bar. So since I have the outline of the bar, I think it's time to go over and grab my marking knife and mark out this bottom part here, and then start fitting this. Okay, I'm going to take my piece, get it lined up, and once I have it lined up, it's time to use the marking knife. Alright, now that we marked it out, it's time to chisel. Just gonna slowly move back just like before. Drop my chisel in the line, pare down. And then back bevel a little bit. Let's give this a little bit of a try widthwise. Ooh, we're just about, oh, we're there. Nice and tight. We're real close. If we're not there, we're just about there. It's great. Okay, let's remove some waste from the top now. Okay, so let's give a try on the top part here. Lines up on top. Oh yeah, we fit. Now, do we fit this way? Yes. Do we fit this way? Yep, maybe a little too loose, but I don't see any space, so we're just there. Okay. Now, what we don't want to do is pound this in and try to get it fit and see if we like it or not. Because the problem is we're never going to get this out. Never going to get it out. So what we need to do now is to actually prep this guy. And what we can do is by testing the sides here, can this get down? You know, I'm pressing it down. I'm really getting there. That's good. Can I press this in all the way or get close to it? And yeah, I can. So, you know, once again, we're never going to get this out if we try to hammer it all the way down. So let's get our chamfers going. We can clean up this line now if we want. A little bit of sanding there too. And then we'll come in and knock this in and glue it in at the same time. So just like yesterday, I'm going to chamfer some edges here. Alright, edges are chamfered. My line's up here. I'm actually going to leave the line just so I don't screw this up. And before we put this in, I want to back bevel just a little bit around here. Let me take a smaller chisel and do that. And I also want to do a little bit of sanding around here. I'm going to start with my 150 grit. I'm going to start with some 100 grit paper first, actually. Get some of these machine marks out of here. Okay, now we'll move up to the 150 and then the 220. All right, now that we're sanded, now we can glue this bad boy in. And I kind of sanded just a little bit down right here into that little spot where I lost some wood, and it looks okay. No one's gonna know. So now let's glue this guy up. Okay, got a little bit of glue, got a nice little skewer here, and just like before, we're gonna get a little bit of glue. Make sure if you did have any squeeze out that you clean that out before you glue this piece in. You don't want to glue into the squeeze out because then the pieces aren't gonna mate. They're not gonna match each other. You have spacing, you don't want that. And I'm just gonna put just a little bit here. It's gonna be very little exterior forces trying to pull these apart, so I'm not too worried about it. Just a little bit. Grab my bar. And before you do this, before you even put any of the glue in, you gotta make sure that you fit this. So you put it down and fit all the way over here on both sides. And otherwise, this guy's not going to go all the way down, and we're going to have issues, which are all fixable with a little bit of epoxy colored black with some ebony, but ebony colored epoxy. But nonetheless, it's time to drive this guy home. All right, we're there. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that looks great. I don't know if you can see or not, but I can pull my finger here and feel there's a difference in the height. And it's just a couple thousandths of an inch. We can clean that up with a little bit of sanding and some chisel. But we are right there. Everything's nice and tight together. I can't see any gaps between the pieces at all. I think we did it. This looks good. So, one down, 3 more to go. Now, the rest of the bars are pretty much the same thing. For the next bar up, I'm able to use the ruler for my square. However, for the next 2 bars, I use 2 different sized chisels. Line up the bar for the back with the bar of the front. Draw yourself a baseline. After you've drawn your baseline, then you can measure the amount of distance the bar in the front is hung over onto the mahogany. Mark that measurement in the back. Align your bar and knife around it to have a line to chisel back to. Before you actually glue the bar in, make sure to sand the surface up to 220. And before you glue the bar in, just be sure there's no squeeze out from when you glued in the front bar. And if you need to, use a clamp to bring the front and rear bars together. We have all of our bars in. They're not perfectly even on both sides. So what we can do is take a chisel and clean some of this up. So for instance, this bar here sits a little bit taller than the bar behind it. Well, it's other mating half, just a little bit. So I take my chisel here and I pare back or pare down. I can get rid of some of that, just kind of, I want to say get rid of, but try to smooth out and make it an equal amount of distance. Or just smooth it out. Smooth the transition, that is. Then we come in later with a little bit of sanding paper. No. Well, I'm excited. We got bars in the front, bars in the back, and everything looks really good. We're chamfered, we're sanded. We have a little bit more sanding left to do on the bars to prep them before we put our sterling silver in. And this will be a lot of fun, something you may not have done before. But yeah, it's going to be really cool. We'll get the sterling silver into all of our little holes. We'll get them to the correct heights, sanded. It's going to be a ton of fun. So, in the meantime, enjoy the fact that you got your bars in the front and they're looking pretty good. Go sit down, have a cold refreshment or something. I'm actually going to go in. I'm going to have dinner right now. But enjoy. It's time to get the sterling silver into our bars. So let's take a look at the setup. Before we actually put the sterling silver into the bars, we need to do some sanding on them. But real quick, let's talk about what's here. Obviously our center back slat and our rear apron. We also have this big Ziploc bag, a pair of needle nose pliers, some sterling silver, and some sandpaper for sanding the bars, and then a file, and a nice little Tupperware box here. And I already have started cutting some pieces. So what I like to do is take my needle nose plier and get my piece inside of it where the cutting section is. And once I get those guys lined up, distance-wise, well, we're about 0.2 inches. Basically, what I'm looking for is enough of the shaft that'll be round, that'll make contact inside of the hole with a little bit of glue. And I like to come inside the bag because that little guy's going to fly once you cut it. And just squeeze until you cut the silver. And yeah, it takes a little bit of force. Nice thing about the bag is it keeps the little piece of silver from flying all over the shop. So these guys are going to need 10, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 pieces for the front and back on each bar until we get to the very top where we need 8 pieces on the front and back for each bar. So let's get cutting a whole bunch of pieces. I'm going to do the bottom bar together with you guys, and then you'll be able to do the rest. So I have some 320 grit paper here and some 600 grit paper. And I'm going to take a little bit of the 320 and tear that off. And fold this guy over. And just sand my surface up here at the top. Ebony sands really quick. It's really nice. Okay, that's the 320. Grab some 600. Get rid of the dust. Now, you can also come in here and grab these sides. So I'm just sanding the bevel, chamfer that is, that we put on, and the exposed section. Now, if you want to be a little bit more careful, what you can do is grab some blue tape and start taping along the edges. And this will give you an area, basically masking off an area, allowing yourself to sand all the way up without having to worry about touching the mahogany. There we go. Now we've masked off our ebony here, and we don't have to worry about coming in and doing any damage to the mahogany. We can just come in and sand. If you have some rouge, feel free to use it. I'm going to use some here. Take a cloth, fold it over a few times, get my rouge and just put some on it. Don't need a lot. Then you can use the cloth and you can, with the rouge on it, and you can just buff these out. Okay, with those buffed out, now we can start to apply our sterling silver. I have some super glue here, and I'm just going to put a little bit of that onto the scrap of Baltic birch plywood here. And with my little skewer, I'm going to take a little bit of glue, pick one of my holes, and get the skewer inside and just spread the glue around inside the hole. Just a little bit. And I'll grab one of my little pieces of sterling silver, a tack hammer. This is for upholstery work. and knock this guy in. What's nice about the tack hammer is it has a really small head, so you can work in this confined area. We don't want to go down too far because we're going to flatten this. You can see how the tip here is pointing. That's from being cut with the needle nose pliers. So that's one down. 9 more to go for this bar. Once these guys are dried for a little bit, I'm going to come in with a file here. It's got a pretty coarse cut to it compared to this file here, which has a very fine cut. And I'm going to start to just file across the silver. Now that I've flattened everything out, I've got a nice smooth surface and looks like we're pretty much the same height all around. I'm going to take a sanding block and sand down. The file tends to cause the silver to mushroom, and that's not what we want. We want this to match the size all around. Same round, 1/8 of an inch radius, or 1/16 of an inch diameter. So we want that shape, that round shape. So the mushroom's not going to work. That's why we go to the sanding block. You want to be careful to check your progress so you don't go sanding into the bar and you're not going too low. We're just going for just a nice proud little bit above our bar, maybe a 32nd of an inch or so. Okay, that feels pretty good. That's the 100 grit. I'm going to step up to the 150. Okay, that's good. Let's go down to the let's go up to the 220. Now some 320 by hand. If I had another block, I would use it. Once you get a nice shine to 320, let's step up to a 600. That looks really good, and if you want, you can always grab that piece of cloth, put a little more rouge on it, and buff everything up. Alright, we've got our first bar, the front that is, with our sterling silver in here, and it looks really good. Let me show you up close. So now that we've done one, you guys should be fine doing the rest. So I'm just chugging along here. I've got the front done, all the silver's in, nice and polished, buffed. The back, I'm almost done. I got one bar left. The bottom 3 have been finished. Now, the reason why I cut into the video right now is these guys, I mentioned cutting them with a needle nose plier because most likely everybody's got one sitting at their house and you don't have to go out and buy another tool, which is great. Eventually it's going to be killer on your hand. So if you want to, 1, cut it without killing your hands, and 2, get more yield out of your silver, then there is a better way. A jeweler's saw. Yes, we all need a new tool. I've had this jeweler's saw for, I don't know, a couple years now, It's made in Germany. It's really good. It's kind of like a mid-level saw. And then you get these little blades for it, just like a coping saw, but same basic concept. You tension the blade by pulling it. What's the difference between it and a coping saw? Probably not much, other than they call it a jeweler saw and one's called a coping saw. But nonetheless, the blades here are usually a little bit smaller, both in length and in total width. This is a very small blade with a really fine tooth set on it. Like, you might not even be able to see it. Let me show you. I bought this saw a couple years ago and these blades for another project I did earlier in the year, late last year actually. I've actually gone through 2 of these so far. This is my 3rd blade cutting this. So probably a thicker, less tooth per inch blade would have been a little bit better, but this is what I had around the shop. So let me show you how this works. I've got this piece of silver clamped up into the vise here, and just like any other saw, come in, pick how much you want to saw away. And there you have it, 1 piece of silver. I just finished putting in the rest of my silver. The front, as I showed you before, is done, and the back is all done now too. And let's just take a quick look. Now all the silver is just proud of the surface on the ebony. So we have 3 levels here. We have the ebony, the silver, the ebony, and then the center back slat. We have a little bit of work left to do on the center back slat, besides sanding these edges over here, which we'll do once the chair is glued up, these side edges. But I want to sand the ebony right now while I'm thinking about it. The reason why we're going to do some sanding later is once the chair is actually glued up, we know just how much room we have left in the top and the bottom, and we'll come in and do a little bit of sanding here then. So what I want to do is sand the top and the bottom of all these bars. So what I did is I took some strips of oak, thin, and cut these guys down. There's a thinner one here, and it's going to wrap some sandpaper around it, move up through the grits, and let's go through that. You can make these strips in whatever sizes you want. Thickness-wise, it needs to be enough that it stays relatively flat. I think this is about 1/8 of an inch or a little bit less. It's oak. Whatever material you have around the shop will be just fine. And I just grabbed some sandpaper, put it around, and just take it and sand. And just move all the way up through the grits and get everything here nice and sanded. And once you've got it nice and sanded and any marks are out, you can come back in with a cloth with a little bit of rouge on it and buff out the ebony. It's okay to do it's okay to sand again across the grain here. The ebony is so tight that even sanding across the grain, it's still going to look really good once you move up through all the grits. All right, there you have it. 1 center back slat. Looks pretty good. We can do a little bit more work if we want to, and that is we have an idea of where this piece goes in to the bottom, and we have an idea where it goes in to the crest rail on top. So if you want, you can grab a spoke shave right now and just start to round over these edges. But don't go all the way down. We want to stay away from that. We'll do the rest of that by hand later. Okay, so with a spoke shave or a block plane, you can just start working these corners. Yep, that feels pretty good. I got 3 different facets here. I got a 1, 2, and 3. And now this is some 220. I'll just round this over. I just have some 220 here, folded up, and just gonna come around over the inside of these edges here. Well, there you have it. one center back slat. It looks really good. Nice and smooth, everything's great. So what you want to do now is set this aside. And I have the side slats here. Now, what I want to do with these guys is I want to sand them. But the same thing as before, I want to make sure I stay away from the very bottom. So I have my marker, marks for my marker here. They're a little bit deep, but I'm going to worry about it later. We'll use some blue tape. We'll use the blue tape on our chair, and then we'll be able to sand that once everything's glued together. But in the meantime, I'm going to help myself and sand most of this whole area by hand. I'm going to grab my sanding blocks here. I'll probably throw some new paper in since I've used it a lot today. And just get these guys prepped and ready for glue up. And I'm also going to round over the edges, just like I rounded over on the center back slat, but making sure to stay away from that bottom half inch and that top half inch.